What's up, people? My name is James Blissett, professional sports bettor and founder of Lucrative MMA, which is my handicapping service where I help people make money from sports betting. But today I'm here to bring the Lucrative MMA Betting Podcast back again. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus recently. I was just checking my podcast archives, and the last podcast I did was back for UFC 265. Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane. And this is UFC 266, so I thought it would be perfect time to bring it back. There's been a few reasons why I've been away on the podcast front, at least. Of course, I'm out there every single week, grinding on tape, sending out bets for myself, placing bets myself, sending out bets to our members, making the weekly betting breakdown video, which is 45-minute video every single week. Haven't missed one ever. They're all uploaded to my website. But the reason I haven't been putting a podcast out, a few different reasons, but I've just been really busy lately. I have been working on some videos for the website for members. Obviously, if you don't know, I provide sports betting training courses on my website, but I just wanted to update them, upgrade them, because we've been a little bit, I've got some training courses on there, but they're pretty beginnerish. So I wanted to make some more intermediate ones, help people make money or help people understand the philosophy behind sports betting a little bit more than I already have done. So, that coupled in with a few other things is why I haven't been in front of the camera recently, but I'm back again and hopefully I can deliver some value today. So as you all know, or if you haven't heard this podcast before, you won't know, we've got 3 segments in this podcast, right? First, I talk about the most exciting fight on the card. And obviously we're talking about the UFC 266 card, which has quite a few exciting fights. So, I'm excited to talk about that. And the second segment we have is the most inaccurate betting line on the card, right? So I'll go through all of the fights I see, or all of the bets, the prop bets, the parlays, the straight picks, all of the lines that I think are inaccurate. And I tried to give you one of the most inaccurate lines on the card. That's obviously always hard because, sometimes the bookies line the fights fairly accurately, but there's a little bit of an edge on a few bets, so it's kind of hard to pick out what one I want to give you guys. But hopefully, I've actually got 2 for you today. I've never done that before, and there's a reason why I'm going to give out 2 bets, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But that's the second segment. So initially, we've got the most exciting fight, then we've got the most inaccurate line, and then we got the main event. Right? We're going to talk about the main event, which is Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. That's going to be an absolute banger. I can't wait for that. And I'll get into everything, but I'll start from the start, the most exciting fight on the card, right? So this is always hard, Whenever I go through the fights, I'm always thinking, okay, this fight's going to be a banger, that fight's going to be a banger, especially when you got a pay-per-view, We've got UFC 266, so there's so many fights on this card that I think have the potential to be the most exciting fight on the card. But I'm just going to pick the one that, stood out to me initially. We almost didn't get this fight, so I'm happy it's happening now. And to be honest, they haven't weighed in yet, so we're not going to count our blessings yet. We won't count our chickens because it might not be on. The fight still might not be taking place, but it is Dan Hooker versus Nazareth Perez. So this is funny because on one hand, we've got Dan Hooker, and that guy's never in a boring fight. And then on the other hand, we've got Nazareth Perez, who's not flown under the radar because he is a pretty well-touted prospect. But at the end of the day, he also is one of the most exciting fighters in his division. So we've got someone who's one of the most exciting fighters in the whole UFC, Dan Hooker. And then we've got Nazareth, who's one of the most exciting fighters in the division. I mean, you go back and watch his fight, or his fights. He's not in a bad fight either. So I had a lot of fun taping these guys. And in fact, I went into tape thinking something different than what I'm thinking now after coming out of tape. And I'll get into that. But just touching on the potential for this fight not to take place, like I mentioned when I first mentioned the fight. Obviously, if you don't know already, both fighters were struggling to get visa issues. Obviously, we're living in the COVID times and, fights get cancelled, people pull out, people can't get flights, people can't get visas, they don't get access to certain countries. And that's what happened to both of these guys, actually, not just one, not the other, both of them. Both of them found it hard to get visas to allow them to leave their country to go to America to fight at UFC 266. I actually happen to live in the same place Dan Hooker does, which is Auckland, New Zealand. And Currently, we're in a level 3 lockdown. And as of 2 days ago, for the previous 5 weeks, we've been in a level 4 lockdown, which those of you who don't know the New Zealand lockdown, it's a lot more strict than some lockdowns elsewhere in the world. You know, we basically shut everything down. The only thing open is supermarkets and hospitals, you know. So it's no surprise Dan Hooker had a lot of trouble getting his visa, but, you know, he posted a couple of days ago that he was able to get it. I just checked his story on his Instagram earlier, and he arrived in Las Vegas probably about 6 hours ago from now. So it's going to be a tough time for him to cut weight, make weight, and perform well on fight night, but I've got no doubt he'll be able to do it. And then on the other hand, Nazareth Perez went through all the same issues. So I don't even think he's touched down in Vegas yet. Last I saw, he was boarding the plane. But look, I'm just glad that they both was able to sort out a visa, and they're both going to put on a show for us, hopefully. I was thinking that the UFC should just like bump this fight up to a 170 fight, or a catch weight at 165, 160 even, just to give them a little bit of leeway. But we haven't heard anything on that front, so I'm assuming it's going to go ahead at 155. So look, hopefully both fighters can make the weight healthy, because obviously, you know, 1 day to cut weight is not ideal in any circumstance. But man, I just hope we have a good fight. You know, even if they struggle making weight, if they do end up in the cage come fight time, I don't think it can be a boring fight. So that's why I've chosen it as the most exciting fight. And now I'll get exactly into the stylistics of the fight. So, you know, I told you that when I went into tape for this one, I was thinking something else than what I was thinking when I came out of tape. So when I was going into it, I was thinking I was going to have a bet on Dan Hooker here, right? When I looked, it was like minus 175 Dan Hooker. And I was like, you know, this guy could be minus 200 range, you know, because he's fought the better level of competition by far. You know, he's gone 5 rounds multiple times. I know this is a 3-round fight, but he's just proven to have that cardio for 5 rounds. So 3 rounds is nothing to him. I just thought that in general, I might like Dan Hooker, you know, but that's one of the most important things about tape, is that you have to do your tape study. You can't just bet on who you think is going to win when you're thinking about your memory, or what you think about fighters in your memory, because there's a lot of things you forget. You know, like I was thinking Dan Hooker is a much better overall MMA striker, much better boxer than Nazareth Perez. I thought he might have a speed advantage. A lot of these things that I was thinking in my mind before I watched the film were incorrect. You know, after I watched the film, I was like, oh, damn, I was wrong on that. I was wrong on that. And that's because, you know, the human brain can only remember so much. And in general, me anyway, just personally, I've got a bad memory. So I always have to do tape, and I always have to do a lot of tape, right? It's funny because you even think fights go a completely different way than they went. You know, like I can't think of any specifically off the top of my head, but there's been countless times where I've thought, you know, something happened in a fight, or a fight went a particular way, and I rewatched that fight again for film study purposes, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is a completely different fight than I imagined. You know, it's way closer than I imagined, or it's way more of a domination than I remembered. You know, like I definitely thought this guy won the first round when I was watching it live, or when I was remembering it, but when I watched it again for film study, he clearly lost the round. So film is basically, you know, I know there's a few people out there who have stats-based models and AI models to cap MMA. But at the end of the day, stats are amazing. You need to use stats. Don't let anyone tell you stats are useless. But film is the golden standard, in my opinion. And I don't really think there's much of an argument to that, to be honest. Obviously, the gold standard is to combine stats and combine film together. But I'm just trying to make a case here that basically, if you want to earn money from MMA betting and you're not tailing anybody like myself, and you want to bet yourself, you need to be watching film. Okay, there's no argument against it. Anyway, getting back into the stylistics of this fight, right? So look, I think so when I was going in, I thought I might lean Dan Hooker. When I came out, I actually saw, I'm seeing it now as more of a 50-50 fight. Actually, even a slight lean to Nazareth Perez, you know. I think Dan Hooker may give Perez trouble because Dan Hooker is an outside rangy striker. He does like to throw them calf kicks. He loves a good leg kick. We saw what he did to Dustin Poyer with them kicks. We saw what he did to Paul Felder with them kicks. Both 5 rounds fights, never stopped kicking the calf. Both fighters are just so tough. They was able to basically tough it out in that fight. But yeah, he's got a great calf kick. He's got a good diverse striking in general. He'll throw teeps up the middle. He's very well known for his knees up the middle. His boxing is good. He's got that check left hook when you're coming in. He throws good body kicks. He's a great all-round MMA striker. He does work in the clinch. Whenever he gets in the clinch, he throws good knees in the clinch, good tie knees. He trains out of City Kickboxing here in Auckland. So, he's training with Israel Adesanya. There's even clips of him and Israel Adesanya sparring on YouTube and stuff. So he's training at a high level. Sometimes Alexander Volkanovski will come over to New Zealand, or potentially Dan Hooker will go to Australia and they'll get some good sparring in. So he's fighting with high-level fighters. City Kickboxing has quite a few good kickboxers in general. So that's his style. He's got a kickboxing style. But as we've seen, he can still mix it up on the ground. I remember him getting Mark Diakaze in a very solid body triangle in the first or second round. He also tapped out Mark Diakaze with a guillotine choke in the third round. We see him control Ally Quinta for large portions on the ground. So the guy's an all-round MMA fighter, of course. But, his base style is kickboxing, and it's very diverse kickboxing as well. Then we move on to Nazareth Perez. He's more of a boxer. Obviously he'll throw kicks. He fight, he's an MMA fighter. He's going to mix in all the tools. But he's mainly a boxer, but he's very good at it. It's funny because his distance control, I wouldn't say is as good as Dan Hooker's, but the way he closes distance is a lot better than Dan Hooker's, in my opinion. And he needs to close distance often because, he's not the tallest. He's not the tallest lightweight. He's not a short lightweight, but, there are, a number of lightweights that have got a height and reach advantage on him here. And I'm not exactly sure if Dan Hooker does, but I'm fairly certain without checking the stats, and I'll check the stats now, but I'm fairly certain in saying that Dan Hooker does probably have a height and reach advantage on him here. I'll just bring up for anybody not listening via audio, anybody listening or watching on the video, I'll bring up Dan Hooker and Nazareth Perez's stats so you can basically see what I'm seeing. So hopefully you can see that if you're watching live. And yeah, so Dan Hooker is 6 foot, okay, and he's got a 75 reach, 75.5-inch reach, And we go to Nazareth Perez. He's 5'10" and a 72-inch reach. So yeah, Dan Hooker, like he does have on most of his opponents, he's going to have a reach and height advantage here, right? But Nazareth, as I was saying, he's not alien to this. He's dealt with this multiple times in his career, and he's won a lot of them fights that he's had to deal with that with, right? I've seen it in the UFC and even before the UFC. So, it's funny because it's going to be a battle of Dan Hooker trying to keep range, right? Which he is good at, especially early, when he's got a lot of energy, when he's not tired. It's going to be a battle of Dan Hooker keeping range, in my opinion, and then a battle of Nazareth closing a distance and, finding them in pocket boxing strikes. And they're both very good at them things. So it's going to be real interesting to see who's able to get their game going, because Dan Hooker in general is good at keeping range, calf kicks, keeping you on the end of his strikes. When you come in, check hook, turn off. And he can fight close quarters as well. Of course, he loves a fight in general. So he does like to get in close quarters, but he's very good at keeping the range game. And then Nazareth's very good at closing distance. We've seen it all the time. We've seen him knock quite well. I know we've seen him knock Joaquin Silva out in the UFC, but we've seen him land heavy strikes on people in that boxing range as he's closing distance. So it's really going to be a battle of that. And why I lean Nazareth a little bit, I guess it's just because stylistically, I do believe that he will be able to close distance a little bit better than Dan Hooker can keep range. And even if Dan Hooker is able to keep range for more of the fight, I think Nazareth can land heavier shots, because I do believe that he's got quite a solid power advantage, even though he's got less knockouts in the UFC. I do think he's got more power than Dan Hooker. So I just believe that even if Dan Hooker's keeping him on the outside, which he may do for periods of the fight, I think Nazareth can potentially land the heavier blows and it will just look more damaging to the judges. And I think that can sway him rounds. If there's a close round, Dan Hooker has kept on the outside for like 3 minutes. Nazareth has got inside for 2 minutes. Even though Dan Hooker's, getting his game off a little bit more often than Nazareth, I think Nazareth will potentially, do more damage than Dan. And so that will sway him rounds. But at the end of the day, I think this fight is extremely close. I think it's so close that I don't like a bet on either side. If you was going to play it, or if I am going to play it, it would be Nazareth, just because he's the underdog, plus 125. If he was plus 150 still, like he was earlier in the week, then I would probably bet Nazareth. But at the current line of plus 125, I don't want to bet it. And another huge reason why I don't want to bet it is obviously because of these weight issues that we know both fighters are probably going to have. When I spoke about the visa issues and stuff, it's just hard to get behind. Both fighters are going through it. So is that going to cancel it out? Well, you would say so, but at the same time, maybe not. It might really affect Dan Hooker and not affect Nazareth that much. Or it could be the opposite. The weight issues, the visa issues, the lack of sleep, whatever you want to call it, lack of preparation, it might really affect Nazareth and not affect Dan Hooker that much. And we won't know until they get in there in the octagon, right? And we'll probably never even know, right? Because they're not going to come out and say it, or it might not be super evident to us, the plain eye watching it, but it might affect one a lot more than the other. The human body's just different. Everyone reacts to things differently. So that is, another layer of the pie that is kind of keeping me off this fight in general from a money line perspective. But there is a bet I will be playing on this fight. And this is going to be one of the bets I tell you when I'm talking about the most inaccurate line on the card. Because the most inaccurate line on the card, I was going to choose this. I was going to choose this bet, but I'm also using this fight for the most exciting fight segment on this podcast. So I don't want to just give you, I don't want to make the most inaccurate line the same fight as the most exciting fight, if you understand what I mean. So I'm going to give you another bet as well, which happens to be in the main event. So in essence, we're not really having a separate segment for the most inaccurate line on the card. The most inaccurate line happens to be on the first segment of the podcast, the most exciting fight, and the last segment of the podcast, the main event, right? So we're just tying them into one, and I'm going to give you two bets here. So the bet I'm going to be going for is Nazareth Perez to win via decision at plus 350. Now, I'm just going to bring best fight odds up here just to confirm that line is available right now, still widely available, even though I know it is. I just want to show you live on the podcast here. I locked it in about an hour ago. I don't think it would have changed by then. Quick shout out to my man Z's MMA as well. I bought this mug from him. If you can see this mug, we'll wait for it to focus. I suffer from PTBD, post-traumatic bet disorder. As you can see, Colby Covington by decision, a minus 138, $500, return zero. Return zero. Yeah, I suffer from post-traumatic bet disorder, Whenever I think about Tyron Woodley or Colby Covington, I'm like, damn, Colby Covington or Tyron Woodley, you only needed to last like 2 more minutes and I would have cashed that bet. But it is what it is. But yeah, quick shout out to Z anyway. He does some solid MMA betting mugs. If you want to go to his Twitter, Z's MMA, you can probably find the link on his bio to the mugs he sells and stuff. But yeah, I'm bringing up my screen now so you can see exactly what I'm looking at. So I've got Nazareth Perez, Dan Hooker up here. And where are we? So we're going to look for Perez wins via decision. Okay, yes. So look, plus 350 on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books here. Plus 325 on 2 books. Plus 345 here. Bet online, I think that is. So yeah, plus 350. Look, I just think that line is, to be honest, extremely off. Not even a little bit. I think that line is off by quite a lot, to be honest. I usually don't go big on these type of props, though, just because Look, Nazareth is a decision fighter, but I do think he can hurt Dan Hooker in this fight. Obviously, Dan Hooker is also coming off a first-round knockout of Michael Chandler. And previous to that, one of the most brutal fights of the year, one of the best fights of the year, which was Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poyer. So I'm not going to go too heavy on it just because maybe Dan Hooker's chin is feeling effects, is still feeling effects from his first-round knockout and his Dustin Poyer fight, because previous to that, his chin was rock solid. And now, one fight after the Dustin Poyer war, he gets knocked out in the first round, which is not like Dan Hooker to get knocked out, to even get knocked down in general, to even get hurt, really. So, I can't completely trust his chin. But at the same time, Nazareth, even though he hits very hard, he is a decision fighter. If we look at Nazareth's record, the guy has got he's got one stoppage in the UFC. He's got one stoppage in the UFC, which is against Joaquim Silva. Other than that, he's gone to a decision, in all of his wins. And we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 other wins there, and he's gone to a decision in all of them. So I know he does hit hard. He definitely hits hard, but I just believe that Dan is a tough motherfucker and he can probably outlast it, right? And as I said, I kind of lean Nazareth in this fight. So I'm leaning Nazareth like 55% or something. I think he wins the fight, roughly 55%. And then I'm thinking Nazareth, if he does win the fight, probably 75 to 80% of that time is via decision. So in my opinion, I'm saying like Nazareth wins this fight via decision about 40 to 45%, right? So I think this Nazareth via decision should be like plus 150. But it's like plus 350, or plus 175, I think it should be, but it's plus 350. So that's a very big edge there. So I'm definitely going to be playing it. At the moment, I played it for half a unit. Just talking out loud now, I might even play it for a little bit more. Because, I don't know, if Nazareth wins this fight, he could definitely knock Dan Hooker out, but I just don't think it's a high probability. I think more likely he gets a decision like he has done against way less tough guys. By the end of the day, he does have heavy power. We have seen it in, a few of his fights, not only the one where he got the knockout in. So, I'm not going to be going crazy on the decision line, but I do think that the line is fairly inaccurate there. So that's it. I'll move on to the next fight. I'm taking Nazareth Perez for the win, but I'm taking him for a decision win. That's my final prediction on the fight. But, that's a super close fight. At the end of the day, Dan Hooker has fought at that elite level, and Nazareth just hasn't. He stepped up once against Drew Dober, a top 15, 20 lightweight, and he got knocked out in the first round. He got knocked out in 60 seconds, So when you're looking at Dan Hooker, he's been in there with Dustin Poyer, 5 hard rounds, could have won that fight in the second round, only lost it 3 rounds to 2. Paul Felder won that fight, split decision, 5 hard rounds, even Michael Chandler been in there for half a round or something. So maybe it's just that Dan Hooker's just one level above Nazareth, but just stylistically, what I see, I believe Nazareth's got a great chance of winning this fight. I lean Nazareth, and I actually taken him by decision, and I'm also obviously betting him by decision. So that's it. So the next fight, or the next segment, is the main event now. We go straight on to the main event, right? And I'm also going to tie that into the most inaccurate line segment, because I'm going to give you another bet, another inaccurate line. So the main event is Brian Ortega versus Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski, the most underrated fighter in the UFC, in my opinion, taking on a solid fighter in Brian Ortega, man. Brian Ortega has one loss in his whole career, which was against Max Holloway, the featherweight GOAT at the moment. I do still believe that, it's not really an argument that even though he's lost to Volkanovski twice, I don't think you can say Volkanovski, he's the GOAT, because obviously he's only defended his belt once against Max in a very close fight. Max has, solidified himself as the featherweight GOAT. Him or Aldo, you can argue about that. But Volkanovski's right there. I definitely think he's third. And look, Volkanovski could easily go on and solidify himself as the featherweight GOAT. And we'll see if he can take one step towards that this weekend. I think he will. And I'll get into the stylistics of it. So Brian Ortega, obviously, he's known for his wicked jiu-jitsu. He's got quite a few submission wins in the UFC. But he's got quite a few knockout wins in the UFC as well now. I believe that he might, or not quite a few. I know he knocked out Frankie Edgar And did he knock out Clay Guida with that knee? Just thinking back, it was a heavy knee he hit Clay Guida with. I think that might have been a TKO. It might have wrapped up a submission right after it. Just going on his record now. Yeah, it was a knockout. So look, he's known for his submissions, but at the end of the day, he's got the same amount of knockouts as the submissions in the UFC. So, he finished Thiago Tavares in round 3. God, this guy's got so many round 3 finishes. I mean, when he came into the UFC, he fought Thiago Tavares, finished him in round 3. Next fight, Diego Brandao, finished him in round 3. Next fight, Clay Guida, finished him in round 3. Next fight, Moicano, finished him in round 3. 4 round 3 finishes in a row, pretty crazy. Then he fought Cub Swanson, finished him in round 2. Then Frankie Edgar finished him in round 1. Then there was nowhere else to go. Obviously, Holloway stopped him in round 4 there. So, most of his fights don't go to decision. But his last one did. And his last one, he definitely showed improvements there, right? So we saw Brian Ortega come out and people are calling him Ortega 2.0 and stuff. And look, I tend to agree with the fact that Brian Ortega definitely looked a lot better than he has in previous fights. In terms of the stand-up, I believe his approach to the fight was a lot better. He was a lot more patient in there. He was measuring Zombie as opposed to kind of just using his toughness and wailing forward like he does in quite a few of his fights. He always gets caught in his fights, no matter who he fights. He's always getting caught. But in that fight, he looked a lot more cautious. He looked improved in the stand-up, I think it's undeniable that he improved in that fight. Now, did he improve enough to beat someone like Alexander the Great? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, Alexander Volkanovsky is a level above Brian Ortega. Now, I'm not so worried about Brian Ortega improving so much on the feet that he's going to outpoint Volkanovski or, win a stand-up battle over 25 minutes with him. Even though I do think he's improved, I'm not, so worried that he's improved that much that he's going to be able to do that. I am more worried about him snatching a neck up on Alexander Volkanovski, hitting Volkanovski with a big knee coming up the middle, a head kick, and then he jumps on the back or something. That's what I'm more worried about. I'm more worried about the Ortega we've seen in his first 6 fights as opposed to what we've seen in his last fight, right? I think that if he tries to out-kickbox Volkanovski on the outside, he's probably going to lose fairly comfortably 50-45. But I do think he's got the power edge, considerable power edge, in my opinion. Volkanovski hits hard, don't get me wrong, but I think Ortega's got more power. I think he's proven that over his career. I think he's got more dynamicism. I think he's I know he's a much better finisher, even on the feet, even with striking. I think he's a much better finisher. We see him in that 3rd round probably hurt Max Holloway maybe more than Max Holloway's ever been hurt at 145, I would say. Obviously, Poyer hurt him a couple of times, but that was at 155. At 145, we haven't seen him hurt as much as he was in that Ortega fight. Now, a lot of you listening are going to be like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? That Ortega fight was a complete beatdown by Max, and it was. But if you go back and watch the 3rd round, I'm almost certain it was the 3rd round. It was the 3rd round. Ortega come back in that round, and he actually caught Max Holloway quite a few times in that round. Now, Max still won the round, in my opinion, but he still caught him in that round, and he actually not wobbled Max, but we saw Max hurt more than we've ever seen. Let's just say that. Like, we saw the shots doing more impact on Max than we've ever seen in his career at 145. Aldo a couple times clipped him, but I still think Ortega probably, clipped him and hurt him a little bit more than anyone has done. So, yeah, that's not easy to do against Max Holloway. If Max Holloway looks a little bit stumbly, or if you can tell that you hit Max Holloway with a good shot because of his reactions, then you've done more than most people in the UFC, right? So I do give the power lean to Ortega, and that's the only worry I have with Alexander losing this fight because, at times, Volkanovski loves to mix in his wrestling. If he does that, it could get a little bit sticky. He's a lot shorter than Ortega. Ortega's known for them knees up the middle. It could be a little bit sticky if Volkanovski's trying to close distance and get for a takedown or something. And, Ortega is known for the knees up the middle, but he's also known for the uppercuts up the middle. So just in general, them shots that come up the middle from underneath, the ones that you don't see when fighters are closing distance, he's very good at that, I'm not going to say he's made a career out of it, but it's definitely helped his career. So I think definitely Volkanovski's got to worry about when he's closing distance. In my opinion, if you're Volkanovski, just stay away from the wrestling, even though I think that he could get wrestling going. I mean, Brian Ortega doesn't have good takedown defense. He obviously doesn't care about being taken down, right? Because he's such a good jiu-jitsu fighter and he's so good off his back. He's so good in his offensive jiu-jitsu off his back, not just when he's taking you down, but just when he's being taken down, he's also very good. He's got the great guillotine, just the front headlock series, the front choke series in general is very high level. So he doesn't really care about being taken down. So I do think Volkanovski can have success, but it's just like, do you really want to put yourself in a position to be choked out? Because, man, I don't care how good Volkanovski is. Brian Ortega can choke anyone out in the UFC. You know what I mean? So, on one hand, I do think that it'll be maybe clever to mix in takedowns in this fight just to offset Brian's rhythm, maybe to keep him guessing, just in general. But on one hand, I'm kind of thinking, you know what? Just leave the wrestling. Just stick to the outside, leg kick him, just outpoint him. Do what you did to Max Holloway in that first fight. Play that sort of game plan. But that's what makes this fight interesting, right? It's not an easy fight to make a game plan for, in my opinion, for either fighter. I think it's pretty hard. There's a lot of fights you go in, and you're like, okay, this is obviously the way the fighter wins the fight, right? And, you could say that here to some degree. In my opinion, Alexander Volkanovski's probably best chance of winning this fight is just making it outside 25-minute kickboxing fight. He's got the best feints in the whole of the UFC. In general, the city kickboxing boys, and I know Volkanovski is not actually, even though he gets classed as that, he's not actually a city kickboxing boy out and out. He's from Wollongong in Australia, and he trains down there in Australia, but he does come over to Auckland a lot. But just in general, that camp, right, that camp of city kickboxing alumni or guys, they are very good at feints. They're probably the best feinters in the UFC right now. Dan Hooker, we see his feints are very high level. Israel Adesanya is obviously the best example of that. Alexander Volkanovski is right there with him as well. So I believe that Alexander should, probably to some degree just try and stick on the outside, feint, second guess, offbeat rhythm, different timing, overhands, leg kicks, straights to the body, keep him guessing. That is probably his best chance. But at the end of the day, I don't think it will be, a terrible decision to mix in wrestling. But I'm not going to sit here and devise a whole game plan for Alexander Volkanovski. But, I'm just talking out loud. I'm not going to say it's a terrible decision if Alexander wants to take him down here and there just to disrupt his rhythm. And then on the Ortega side, I think just let it loose. As I said when I first started this breakdown, I don't think it's a great idea for Ortega to fight how he did against Chan Sung Jung, because I think he's going to lose that fight, right? If he tries to pick him apart on the outside, I think he's going to lose that fight, man. I think what he needs to do is fight kind of similar to the Brian Ortega of old. Brian Ortega has an amazing chin, one of the best chins in the division. We saw how much punishment he took from Max Holloway, and although Max Holloway is not a striker where he's going to put you down or drop you that often, we just saw his toughness. He didn't give a fuck. At the end of that fourth round, he didn't want the fight to be stopped. He carried on coming. And just in general, we've seen him take big shots. Even Frankie Edgar hit him with some huge shots. And Frankie's got some decent power. I know 145, but he's still got some decent power. We know Brian Ortega's got a solid chin. So, he might not have to worry, too much about Volkanovski's power. So in my opinion, you don't really have to worry. I mean, look, of course you got to worry, but he doesn't have to put so much emphasis on worrying about Volkanovski's power. He doesn't have to put so much emphasis on worrying about Volkanovski's wrestling. In my opinion, it's really the distance and feints that he needs to worry about. So I say just, smartly try and close range, try and get in the pocket, try and hurt Alexander with them big uppercuts he's known for, big knees he's known for. Get Alexander to panic wrestle as opposed to wrestle on his terms and try and snatch up some submission there, try and reverse position, try and get on top, do some damage on top. He's a lot larger man. He's got a bigger frame, probably be able to control Volkanovski. If he is able to flatten him out, he probably will be able to get some solid top time on Volkanovski. I just don't have any confidence that he is going to be able to flatten him out because he's not a very good wrestler. And even if he does take Volkanovski down, Volkanovski is so compact, so explosive. I think he'll be able to explode out, back up. But if somehow he is able to get control for like 10 seconds and flatten him out on the mat, get some sort of traditional jiu-jitsu position like half guard and stuff, then I think he can really go to work on Volkanovski. I just find it extremely unlikely that the fight's going to get there because of Volkanovski's explosivity. As soon as it touches the ground, he's going to be straight back up. I don't think Ortega is going to get the time he needs to get to half guard, which then he can go to work. A lot of people who are capping MMA or betting on MMA don't really see that angle. It's like, can a fighter, do well against another fighter from top control? Now, yes, Brian Ortega, if he gets on top of Volkanovski, he can dominate there. I'm almost certain of that, right? But he needs to be on top for at least 10 seconds before he can dominate, before he can go to work. It's not just like as soon as he gets him down, he's going to be able to go to work. That's what a lot of people miss. It's like, yes, Ortega can do work on top, but he needs to first control him for that 10 seconds, which isn't a jiu-jitsu, that's not what happens in jiu-jitsu. Right, that's wrestling. In wrestling, you take someone down, you try to pin them, couple of seconds, and if it's MMA, if you're a good wrestler, you pin them for a couple of seconds, and then you start working your jiu-jitsu, right? But in jiu-jitsu, they're on the floor anyway, right? So they're already used to that. So yeah, I don't think Ortega's going to have too much success in the wrestling or getting control. But if he does, he can be very dangerous. Look, I'll wrap it up now by saying that I think Volkanovski is a level above in MMA, right? I just think he's a level above. I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's a better striker. I think he's got higher fight IQ. Durability, I'm going to give to Brian Ortega. Jiu-jitsu, I'm going to give to Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega does have some, height and reach advantage as well. So physical advantage a little bit to Brian Ortega there. But at the end of the day, I think Volkanovski is just a level above. And I do think he's going to show that this weekend. A small caveat, and I don't really talk about this stuff because, I don't really look at the outside of the octagon stuff too much unless it's, glaring like it is in a Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler fight. And I won't get into that. And then like it is in a Nazareth Perez and Dan Hooker fight with them having like 24 hours to weigh in. Unless it's super glaring like that, I don't really take too much from it at all. But I will say that Volkanovski seems extremely angry at Brian Ortega, and I've never, ever seen him like that in any other fight. So hopefully he doesn't come in here with like his anger blinds on or anger glasses and throws the game plan out of the window and just tries to kill Brian, because that's definitely playing into his wheelhouse. But I don't think he'll do that. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the best fighters we've ever seen in the sport. Just pound for pound MMA skills, all-rounder, one of the best fighters we've seen in the sport, in my opinion. And I don't think he's going to come in and just throw the game plan out the window. I think he's going to be able to stick to a game plan, and I think he's going to outpoint Brian Ortega, and I think he's going to win via decision. And that is that's my second bet I'm going to give to you. One of the most inaccurate betting lines on the card is Alexander Volkanovski via decision at plus 130. I locked this in myself 2 days ago or yesterday. That's that memory again. I can't necessarily remember. I think it was yesterday. But I'll just go on here and I'll just share my screen to confirm with you guys, those of you who are watching live. But I will show you that Volkanovski to win via decision. Yeah, plus 135, plus 165 here. What book is this? I might have to jump on that. 5 Dimes. Yeah, 5 Dimes are fucking about at the moment. They're only accepting crypto. So I can't deposit in 5 Dimes right now, but that's unfortunate. If anyone's got 5 Dimes, plus 165 for Alexander Volkanovski decision is a steal. It's silly in my opinion. I just spoke for like 2 minutes on how durable Brian Ortega is, right? The kid is extremely durable. I don't see Alexander Volkanovski stopping him. Alexander Volkanovski's got power. It is 5 rounds. He could do it. Stop Chad Mendes, but Volkanovski is outside he's an outside kickboxing fighter, or he's a close range clinch fighter. He's not really a pocket heavy boxer. Like, he definitely can do that. We see it in the Chad Mendes fight. But that's not his wheelhouse. He's not going to try and end you with one shot. He's not going to, try and stay in that pocket, that boxing range, and throw heavy shots and knock you out. He's going to be on the outside touching you, or on the inside clinching you, pushing you up against the cage so you can't do anything. So his style is a decision style because of the two things I just mentioned. On the other hand, Ortega, extremely dynamic finisher. He definitely could finish Alexander Volkanovski in this fight. I don't think Ortega is going to win the decision. I think it's much more likely Ortega finishes him. But that's what I would have said in his last fight against Korean Zombie, and we saw what happened there. And I had a plus 240 ticket on Brian Ortega inside the distance in that fight, and he hit him with a spinning back elbow, and he almost had him out, and he couldn't finish it. So that's very annoying. Could add that to the PTBD Cup, but, I went for this one. But anyway, that's my prediction, guys, is Alexander Volkanovski to win via decision. That is my outright prediction. And I'm also giving you that another inaccurate betting line at plus 165, Alexander Volkanovski to win via decision. So that's it. Bang. I'm wrapping up. I've done. Sorry, I've been away again. Just over a month I've been away, but I'll be back to normal now. I have made, I've made quite a few of the videos I wanted to make for the members area for my website. So that's not going to distract me too much anymore. So yeah, you can get used to seeing me back again. My Lucrative MMA Betting Podcast will be out weekly, as it always is. And yeah, I'll be putting out some more content on MMA betting and sports betting in general as well, because I get a lot of messages asking people how I was able to become so successful at sports betting. And I want to give some insight into how I did it, some tips and tricks. And this is all going to be free on YouTube, as well as, on all the podcast channels. If you want to go a bit more in depth and find out, the professional side behind it, I will have a lot more content on my website. And obviously, if you did want to get my bets and earn money with me, you can sign up to my website, lucrativemmabetting.com. But if you just check the bio under this video, all the links are going to be there. You can check my results. You can check my members page, all of that stuff. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. Good luck on all your bets. And I'm just going to go through before I cut off, I'm going to go through through some of the comments, because I didn't do that when I was doing the live podcast, because I, some people listen to this podcast on audio, and I don't really want to be going over all of these comments and answering you guys while the guys are listening on audio. I can imagine it could be quite annoying, right? So just quickly going to go through some of the comments here. Shout out to my man Cap in service. I appreciate the content. Yeah, thanks, man. It's good to be back. Leonardo is saying, oh, man, I've been looking for something from you on your Telegram, your site, but just can't afford it. Okay. Waiting to hear Merab as the most inaccurate line. No. Bro, you say you can't afford it. If you sign up, you're going to be able to afford a hell of a lot more than my membership with the money we make. It's ridiculously cheap for the profits we have and for the results we have. I'm not going to name any specific sports bettors, but there's some famous sports bettors out there that are charging crazy prices, and the results are nothing like us. So anyway, Hazy Papa Smurf is going to kick Testosterone City's face. Can he get his leg that high, though? Definitely kick his leg. Paizo is saying it's interesting that Ortega's last 3 sub wins, he had 0 takedowns in all of those fights. Yes, I agree that Volk should just keep kickboxing for 25 and dominate. Yes, it's true. And, the reason is because he pressures. Ortega's that pressure fighter, right? So he walks forward, hits you. He tries to close distance in the pocket, and the fighters end up shooting on him. Or he just gets in that clinch position because Ortega's pressuring them or hurts them, and it gets in that clinch position, and then Ortega is able to wrap up a sub, So I think Alex should, as you said, just keep it away from that range, just because I think he's got an easy advantage there, and also because he takes away Brian's advantage if he fights there. So Grayson saying he hammered Volk at -150. Good bet, yeah. Unibet has Volk decision at $4, which is plus 300. Yes, I know that, or is it plus 500? But it's only, I think it's a $50 max bet on that one, Pillow Fist. But thanks for letting anybody know. That's still $50 to return $250 or whatever it is, right? Book recommendations for gambling. So MMA betting, Bet Online is the best one. 5 dimes. Bet Online and 5 dimes, I would say, are good. Bet 365 is really good for specific things like fighter to win in round 1, fighter to win in round 2. They're really good there. To be honest, Bet Online, 5 dimes, and Bet 365, you're cushy if you got them books. Obviously, once you start making a lot of money, you need to open lots of books. And it's always better to diversify your income or diversify your bookies because, you're less likely to get closed down and stuff, and you can spread out your money on different bets and stuff like that. But yeah, I would say them 3 are the best ones. SKJR, any thoughts on Valentina 4-5 decision? Yeah, I don't really like it. Any opinion on Calvillo Andrade fight goes the distance being -120? Yeah, I was looking at that actually. That's one of the only fights I haven't taped. So, there's 2 fights: Nick Maximov versus Cody Brundage. I haven't taped, and then Calvillo Andrade. I haven't taped, so I can't really talk about it. But I did see that line, and obviously, women's fight. At the end of the day, that line is predicated on Andrade finishing her, right? If Andrade don't finish her, Calvillo's not finishing Andrade, surely. So maybe a sub, but I highly doubt it. So really, you're kind of betting against Andrade finishing her. So yeah, that's a decent line because there's only like one possibility or one person that can finish the fight, in my opinion. But yeah, I can't really say too much, obviously, until I do the tape. Pizzo, yes, 25. All right, listen. Calvillo's never been finished. Yeah. She never did fight Jessica, though. But I actually don't know if Calvillo should be plus 200 in this spot because Calvillo's a solid boxer and she's going to have some height and stuff on Andrade. So we'll see. We'll see what bet I want to take on that one. Blades versus Rosenstrike. Fight doesn't go to a decision. -180. Yeah, I like that. I like that price there. All right, that's it. I'm going to go, guys. Thanks for watching. Yeah, not much to say. Oh, one thing which I never say, if you can just like this video now, you only need to go down below and just click the thumbs up. Apparently, it helps the video. That's what every YouTuber ever says, so I'm just going to believe them. I've never looked into it, but I guess it will help the video go a bit more viral. So that's what we want to do, man. Yeah, good luck to you on all your bets. Take care. Bang.